With the MCU as proof, Hollywood are big into franchises at the moment, but franchises are not infallible, never-ending conveyor belts of money. While the word sure thing is bandied around a lot, when you've got hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, there's always a massive risk of loss. So yeah, franchises may be the studio's go-to, but that doesn't mean any old series is guaranteed gold every time. The truth is that things audiences once loved can very quickly go sour. So with that in mind, I'm Will for Culture, back from the gym, #squat culture, to bring you 10 dumb mistakes that ruined once great franchises.
Before we begin what I presume is a list, I just wanted to talk to you about a brand new RPG that has been rocking the mobile gaming world to its very core, Raid Shadow Legends. It's immersive, it's exciting, it somehow manages to look better than I do, and best of all, it is completely, utterly, astoundingly free. Raid has all the features you'd expect from a top-class RPG title, like an amazing storyline, awesome 3D graphics, giant boss fights, PvP battles, and hundreds of champions to collect and customize. I mean, look at the crazy level of detail they've put into some of these champions. I have no idea how you cram this much into a smartphone, but somehow they have. Now, there's already a special launch tournament going on where you can win all kinds of in-game prizes as well as real-life physical prizes. Behold my spoils.
This exclusive figurine, this snazzy t-shirt, and this power bank that means we can play on the go.
So go to the description, download Raid using our links, and get 50,000 silver right away, plus a free epic champion courtesy of the dev team. So go on down to the description, gear up, get stuck in, and we will see you on the battlefield.
Number 10. Splitting the final book in two. The Hunger Games. So the Hunger Games film franchise split the final book, Mockingjay, in two. Fair play, this had worked wonders with Harry Potter, the previous cross-generation teen fiction craze, but with all respect to Katniss, she ain't no Boy Who Lived. And even if she was, Francis Lawrence's approach to the split repeated the same mistakes as David Yates, only worse. He claimed it was better to tell the story, only to insert so much extraneous action that the actually important plot points had to be rushed through. This single issue, more than anything else, is what hurts the Hunger Games legacy. The reception to both parts of Mockingjay was considerably muted, and by the time part 2 came around, the amount of people coming out to see the actual movie was considerably down. Number 9. Forsaking everything for toys. Spider-Man. During the production of the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, everyone gushed about the importance of producer Avi Arad, who had shepherded the web-slinger to big screen success with a real understanding of the character. With Spider-Man 3, however, it quickly became apparent that understanding the character came with a big asterisk. Arad is a businessman first, and his primary area is toys. He was head of the Toy Biz, Marvel's merchandise arm, and took over the whole company following the 1996 bankruptcy. For the threequel, his goal was to shoehorn as many iconic villains in, forcing Raimi to include Venom in a story that really didn't need him, among other things. His fingerprints were all over the amazing Spider-Man films too. He pushed for the Lizard, a toy he'd been prepping throughout the Raimi run, and had a very money-based relationship with Sony chief Amy Pascal. There were plenty of other issues with the Spidey flicks between Spider-Man 2 and Homecoming, but the obsession of merch over story is a fundamental one. Number 8. Always attempting to replicate trends. James Bond. James Bond has been around for over 50 years, far and away the longest running mainstream movie franchise, and yet, despite such a lauded history, it hasn't proven to be the roadmap for other series the way you'd expect. There's always talk of an emergent franchise taking the Bond route, but that never comes to pass, mainly out of fear of recasting. Instead, things too often go the other way and Bond rips off whatever's popular at the time. This has proven a mixed blessing. It means Roger Moore's camp films serve as a reflection of their era, but also that Moonraker's plot is completely rejigged to have a Star Wars style finale. While we've seen this rise and fall cycle many times, the Broccolis can't quite escape it, meaning Daniel Craig's tenure has basically been a story of oscillation. Casino Royale and Skyfall were both fresh, exciting outings, primarily because they took broader feelings and applied them to what 007 intrinsically is. Conversely, Quantum of Solace and Spectre both were far too blatantly trying to surf a wave unsuitable for Bond. Quantum tried the intensity of Bourne, and Spectre a mix of nostalgic Lego sequels and shared universes. They didn't work because that's just not what Bond is. Number 7, sequelitis, Pixar. Okay, Pixar's not a narrative series, but its name is certainly a franchise brand, one that habitually pulls in audiences of all ages. But in that regard, the brand has taken a bit of a knock in recent years. Some people say Toy Story 3, although I think that was pretty great, but with Cars 2, however, everyone's in agreement that it's a major misfire. This was followed up by the pretty average Monsters University. I mean, it's okay, but definitely worse than the original. After Finding Dory, serviceable if not all that great, the next 3 years have a follow-up each: Cars 3, The Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 4. It's just a rather unoriginal direction that reeks of Disney arm forcing. Andrew Stanton even stated that that was the reason for Finding Dory. Here's hoping the reports that they're done with sequels proves to be true, and in 2020 we're not all sitting down for Up Part 2. Down. Number 6, Aliens, Indiana Jones. It's pretty cliche to look at the raging disappointment that is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and say that the ultimate problem is the fact that this time the mystical force behind Indy's adventure was aliens. But we're not just talking about the interdimensional beings being a dumb addition to the canon, nor how the attempts at replicating a 50s sci-fi B-movie fell completely flat. It's important to note what they represent in terms of the film's creative process. George Lucas had been wanting to get a fourth, saucer-inflected movie complete with killer ants and rocket sleds off the ground since the early 90s, and refused to go anywhere else with Dr. Jones until Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford relented. The end result was an idea forced into existence over such a long period of time that it wound up being a bastardized version of whatever original spark there once was. Number 5, having no plan, The Hobbit. For the longest time, the explanation for the failure of the Hobbit trilogy was similar to the Hunger Games, in stretching a single, light-hearted kids' book into 3 movies. However, a year after the Battle of the Five Armies brought things to an end with a whimper, the real truth was unveiled. In the in-depth making-of documentaries on the film's extended edition, one section focuses on the overwhelming stresses on the filmmaker during the shooting of the final half of the second film. At one point, Jackson sends the crew on an extended lunch while he tries to figure out the afternoon shoot and confesses he has no idea what's going on.
Peter never got a chance to prep these movies. I can't say that. But he didn't.
This is why the two-parter was pushed to a trilogy, there was no other logistical way to continue, and repositions The Hobbit not as a story of greed or a case for a good editor, but as a testament to the necessity of forward thinking, which is something Jackson should have really known. Rings' brilliance was sealed on the meticulous world building before shooting began. Number 4, thinking it can be a mass market success, Terminator. There's a lot of reasons that the last 3 Terminator movies haven't really worked. Poor directing choices, an over-reliance on time travel, bland recasting of iconic characters, and a complete lack of actual purpose. But all of these things pale next to something bigger. Terminator probably shouldn't be a franchise in the first place. The first movie was a big hit, sure, but it was when the sequel, the most expensive film ever made, smashed up the box office that people thought there was something intrinsic in the idea that could be spun off forever. That it took another 12 years to act on that shows how unique successes these films were, requiring James Cameron's deft hand for action and story-specific characters. You can't just do another one of Terminator 2. After Genesis, a film that ticked all the iconography checkboxes and yet wound up being an original duology fanfic, it should finally sink in that it's better to let this series lie. Number 3, George Lucas taking executive control, Star Wars. Saying Star Wars is the brainchild of George Lucas is both incredibly true and vehemently false. He did come up with the original idea and shepherd it through to cinemas on a production that almost killed him, but he was enabled by a massive team who helped develop the look, story, and structure of his Flash Gordon pastiche come global phenomenon. However, as time went by, he began to become more singularly in control. Oscar-winning editor/wife Marcia Lucas was wiped for Star Wars history after the pair's divorce, and producer Gary Kurtz quit during Return of the Jedi thanks to key production decisions, leading us to the point that he was the untouchable god when the prequels came around. Now, I don't reckon that episodes 1 to 3 deserve all the hate they get, and believe that many of the intrinsic ideas, the flaws of the Jedi, the Emperor tearing the Republic apart from the inside, are powerful concepts, but there's no avoiding their execution leaves something to be desired. The movies are dominated by a strange lack of focus, especially Attack of the Clones, and while it is easy just to point to an obsession with toys, it comes more from George's lack of creative logic and a complete army of yes men surrounding him. As with The Hobbit, only a couple of changes to how things were run, and I honestly believe the prequels could have been much more widely appreciated for more than just the admittedly excellent meme material. Number 2, making Jack the center, Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack Sparrow is the singular reason why Disney's adaptation of their theme park ride, Pirates of the Caribbean, worked. Johnny Depp, at the height of his character acting powers, gave a movie-dominating turn that proved so popular he got an Oscar nomination for it. Regrettably, that success is also the key reason why Pirates gradually declined over the years. Jack's role grew and started dominating proceedings, and by On Stranger Tides, he'd taken over completely. Not too surprisingly, the movies decreased in quality at a similar rate. It is partly a result of the Hannibal complex, where taking someone interesting and overexposing them removes the mystique, but it's more how restructuring movies around a drunk, jokey scoundrel while also trying to make things increasingly booming and epic just doesn't gel tonally. The box office numbers were still good, shockingly good in fact, but nobody actually seems to like the sluggish sequels. Number 1, losing the everyman, Die Hard. Coming in 1988, Die Hard in many ways marked an end, or at least an evolution, of the machismo that had dominated action cinema in the 1980s. Instead of a roided-up Hulk machine gunning down Ruskies, John McClane was an everyman, a down-on-his-luck street cop whose main concern was fixing his broken family, and as he slowly took down Hans Gruber and his 12 disciples, he paved a new path for gun-toting heroes. It's somewhat ironic then that the later Die Hard movies have been defined by Bruce Willis becoming increasingly less believable and John McClane a more generic, indestructible action goon. As the great Michael Scott himself says, Die Hard 1, the original, John McClane was just this normal guy. In Die Hard 4, he's jumping a motorcycle into a helicopter. He's invincible. It just sort of lost what Die Hard was. Well said, Mr. Scott. Well said.